So it's good to see you all this evening. Welcome to this, our fourth webinar in the series that's exploring Stepwise. And as I'm sure you're all aware, tonight we'll be looking at faith-fueled leadership. I'm David Salisbury, and I'm the program manager for Stepwise. And Marion, who we've been chatting to, is with us. Marion's the Stepwise program assistant, and Thomas is up there in the top corner of my screen, who's doing the tech this evening. And we're also joined tonight by three members of the group in the Bristol area who piloted this stream, Faith-fuelled Leadership, over the past year. So welcome to Carol and Ian Cook, and to Claire Nutt-Brown-Hughes. And I've asked them to say a few words later on about their experiences of taking part in this stream. As we've just been talking about, and as with all these webinars, we are recording the session this evening for those who haven't been able to join us. I hope that's okay with everyone, and you'll be able to find this and the other recorded sessions on the URC website. Once we've done them all, we'll probably send links around to everybody just to remind people, and I'll encourage you to pass the links on as well if others are interested too. So our aim this evening is to give you all an overview and a taste of faith-fuelled leadership. We're going to see how this stream fits into the rest of Stepwise and look at the sort of things that participants will be doing as they follow this stream. We'll spend a few minutes in small groups as well, where we'll share our thoughts about the aspects of leadership that are important to us. At the end, there'll be a time for questions, but if you've got things you want to comment on or questions that occur to you as we go along, then please use the chat in Zoom, and we'll address these when we come to the questions at the end. For those of you who have been to all of the webinars, you'll remember that the first session, when we looked at faith-filled life, we spent some time also looking at how Stepwise works as a program and the ways that participants can engage with the material and with others in their groups. So I don't want to go over that all again this evening. So if you weren't able to join us for that, then you can watch back that webinar on the recording that we made, but also the Stepwise pages of the URC website have quite a lot of information too. So if you've got questions about other aspects of Stepwise, then please visit the website to find out, or you can always drop us a line as well and we'll get back to you. So let's begin, as we always do, by reminding you about the whole of the Stepwise program and what it looks like. And I'm going to just begin by sharing my screen for this. To make sure I can see some of you as well. So Stepwise is made up of 5 streams, and as we've been saying all along, faith-filled life is the first stream, the opening stream, and everybody's Stepwise journey begins with faith-filled life. And once participants have done faith-filled life, once you've completed faith-filled life, you can then move on to one of the other 4 streams, including faith-fuelled leadership. There's no order in which these other 4 streams need to be done or can be done, and but faith-fuelled life needs to come first. Now, faith-fuelled leadership is designed to help you grow and develop as a leader. It's not just about church leadership, but about how leadership is something that we're all called to as part of our discipleship journey, and that we might exercise in a variety of different settings. This, of course, may well be in the church, but it also recognises that Christians lead in other places too. and that it is important to identify the qualities and characteristics of Christian leadership and to develop them as we're able. So the main aims of faith-fuelled leadership are to gain a deeper understanding of leadership from a Christian perspective, to explore the relationship between leadership and discipleship. I'm always at pains to remind others and sometimes myself that Stepwise is at its heart a discipleship development program, and all of the streams have that as their focus, as well as the more particular thing that the stream is about. So leadership and discipleship are important. And then the stream also develops some skills for leading well in a variety of different settings. It aims to help us to understand the importance of identifying and developing other leaders, and to discover ways to keep fresh and sustained in leadership over the long haul. So they're the main aims of faith-fuelled leadership. And as you may already know, faith-fuelled leadership is based around the CPAS Growing Leaders course, but it follows the stepwise pattern of learning and reflection. We being Stepwise and the United Reformed Church, have created our own material for participants to work through in preparation for the group sessions. And we've also written extra notes for facilitators to guide them through the Growing Leaders material. All this has been done with the agreement of CPAS and James Lawrence, the author of the Growing Leaders book, on which the course is based. If you do faith-fuelled leadership, you'll need a copy of the Growing Leaders book, as reading through it is an important part of the preparation for the group meetings and just helps you to understand better what the stream is all about. And facilitators will also need access to the Growing Leaders training materials. These are all online and available to purchase from CPAS. But if a group inquires or registers with us, we'll supply you with all the details that you need to enable you to purchase and access these resources. I'll say something briefly about how the stream is structured. It's a 10-session program, which is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 is about firm foundations for Christian leadership. It looks particularly at our identity as leaders and as disciples, thinks about how we're called to leadership and some of the characteristics and qualities that are needed in all kinds of leadership from a Christian perspective. The second part is is more about some of the skills that are required for Christian leadership. It looks at some of the techniques for discerning direction and for creating vision. And it also, there's an encouragement in there to grow other leaders, to identify leadership potential in others and help them to develop, and also about leading in teams. And then the third part of the stream is about how we keep faithful. Looks at things like the cost of leadership and how we manage our expectations, about how we are refreshed and sustained for leadership, and then towards the end, celebrating our journeys and looking forward. The whole of the stream is designed to take about 12 months to complete. This allows for time in between group sessions for reflection, for your meetings with your mentor, the creation of your journal, and completion of various small projects. Most of the group sessions are designed to last a couple of hours, but the first and the fifth sessions are longer sessions. And these could be done over 24 hours as the Growing Leaders material recommends, or as we did in the Bristol group, which when we were meeting on Zoom, these longer sessions could be broken down into several shorter individual sessions, so more bite-sized chunks. I suppose that just leads me to say that, you know, the material is quite flexible, really, and whilst we were meeting on Zoom, we managed to adapt quite easily the material for the group sessions. There's plenty to go on and plenty of choice, really, as you go through the stream. I'm going to pause there. And I've just mentioned that the Bristol group, which met on Zoom, and because I've talked too much already, I want to, at this point, welcome Carol and Ian and Claire, who were part of this group and have kindly agreed to share some of their own experiences of doing this stream with us. So hopefully you can, right, technical manager has spotlighted you all now, so you can see. So perhaps first of all, if you would just introduce yourselves, starting with Carol, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Carol Cook, and I am an elder in the Argyll Morley United Reformed Church in a suburb of Bristol. I'm one of the elders that leads worship on a regular basis, and I'm also the only person and elder in the church who has been authorised to conduct communion services when we don't have an ordained minister available.
Thank you. Ian.
Okay, hello, my name's Ian Cook. You may have gathered from the background for both of us that we're sitting in the same room because we're husband and wife. I am one of the elders again at Argyll Morley United Reformed Church, just outside the centre of Bristol. I wasn't actually a serving elder during the period I did the course, but I am again now. Carol is, I'll say, more in the words activities. I'm one of the organists. I look after health and safety, buildings, jack of all trades really. I do a bit of cooking for the church, so I'm sort of a general factotum, I think you could probably say, in Argyll Morley.
Thanks, Ian. Claire.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Claire Nutbrown-Hughes. I'm a member and elder at Dursley Tabernacle, which is down in Gloucestershire. I am also training for ministry at Northern College up in Manchester, if we've got anyone from the north with us this evening. I am relatively new to the URC, only came across the URC about 6 years ago, and when I was first asked to be an elder, I really questioned what do I have, what do I bring to the table, and found that I was quite shocked actually that people would see things in me. And so this course, or we'll talk about it in a minute, but it was very interesting about the element of drawing out skills and how we see leadership. So it was all very relevant to me.
Thanks, Claire. So we've chatted before this session, of course, and I just wondered if you could briefly tell us what would be the main thing that you took away from your participation in faith-fuelled leadership. What were the sort of takeaway things for you? We'll start with Carol again.
Okay, I think for me, it was two things. It was a fantastic opportunity to engage with other people from other URC churches. There was only one person other than Ian on the course that I actually knew. So to meet other members, elders of URC churches, it showed that the church we belong to is actually quite insular, and something needs to be done about that if we are to move into the future. And also that other churches have similar problems and different problems. The other thing, it took me back to a book that I read years ago called Mr. God, This is Anna. And it's based on a true story. And Anna was a 6-year-old girl living in the slums of London. And if anybody ever asked her what was her belief in God and where was God, her response was always, God is in my middle. And the further I went through the leadership course, the more I was drawn back to that book, and a realization that everything you do, both in your church and spiritual life and in your personal and work life, God is centered in my middle. And he is the driving force behind everything I try to do, both in church and in my work life. And that's the thing that I took away, that you can achieve anything if you are doing what God wants you to do and not necessarily what you think he wants you to do.
Thank you. Yeah. Ian, can you tell me what would be your...
Yeah, I think there's going to be some overlap with Carol here. I was brought up in the Congregational Church originally before the URC, and there was a tremendous amount of emphasis, I remember as a teenager, that we should be seeking the mind of Christ in everything we do. Both in our Christian lives and generally within our lives. And I think it came across that has partially been forgotten by many of us and by many churches. And sort of to echo what Carol said, I'll say it's comforting but worrying that meeting other people, it's the same everywhere. Much of my personal leadership experience has actually been in the secular world. I have been an elder on and off since the early 80s, but most of what I was considering to be leadership was really in my working life before I retired. But there's a lot of common features. And for a lot of the times where you see the word Christian leadership, you could leave the word Christian out, and a lot of the sort of the characteristics are the same. However, the key thing is we shouldn't be ploughing on, as Carol has said, without seeking what God wants. And really the key takeaway for me was reminding us that what we are doing is a calling. It doesn't matter if you're an elder or just a leader of a small group in the church in charge of a number of different little things, but we are called to that by God. And every time we do something in the church, we shouldn't be saying what I think is what we should be doing is. We should be saying, what does God want us to do? It's not a case of God tell us how to get 10 more members, God tell us how to raise enough money to repair the roof. It's God, what you want of this fellowship.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah. So Claire, I'm going to ask you, we'll come back to some of those things in a minute. But
Yeah.
I think probably the first thing I'd say is the course wasn't what I expected it to be. So I expected it to be a course about leadership. And actually, that if you can remember the slide that David showed where there's 3 elements, and the foundation was really important. So just as Carol and Ian have said, there was a lot about call, there's a lot about identity in Christ. There was a lot about discernment about your own spiritual practices. How do you nurture your faith? How do you, where are you best placed? And how do other people see you? So that a lot of that was really important. And there was one thing we did, which was called, can you remember it, guys, the cycle of grief? And it was how in the secular world, a lot of what we do is based on achievement and acceptance, and how the difference for a Christian is that we start from acceptance. So a lot of that was about identity, and we start from that place and what comes from that. And I found that really helped, it helped me develop spiritually, which is not what I expected. And then on top of that, there was a whole load of skills and tips about just things about working in team, about different personalities, about not overstretching yourself. I think they called it, not going into the red. There was a lot about that. Again, the sense of nurturing yourself, taking good care. And practical tips on things like vision, which obviously is really key at the moment as we begin to go back post-COVID. Just some tools there to help us, and a lot about, again, going back to the congregational roots, I suppose, just about the real sort of covenant, about fellowship, of working together as a team, and the importance of working in community, and developing skills to enable that to happen.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. As you said, we started to meet as I was part of the group because I was one of the facilitators of this pilot group, and we started before, pre-COVID, and then we're hit by it, and then switched to meeting on Zoom. And one of the things that struck me was that a lot of the things we were thinking about might have not been possible to put into practice, as churches weren't meeting as they had been previously. So I don't know whether either of you can say some of the things about things that you've been able to do, or the things that you hope to be able to do when churches start to meet again. Or I'll say we're going to go back to normal, because we're not. Things have obviously moved on, so there's questions to be asked, and leadership is vital, isn't it, in these post-COVID times. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts about that. Carol, you've unmuted yourself. You're going to say something.
Yeah, what I've been doing every Sunday, primarily, I am a musician. I'm a singer, and a lot of my services come out of hymns. So ever since we went into lockdown, every Sunday morning I send out just a very short message to those who have access to email based on a hymn. And as we've been going through the Faith-fuelled Leadership, I have been incorporating hymns that have reflected what we may have done in a particular session, and very gently sowed the seeds of what we've been doing with the congregation. Because although obviously we're not quite sure when we will meet, it was important to Ian and I that they knew that this is something that we were doing. And one of the things that I have, when we were looking very much at vision, was on the following Sunday, the hymn I chose was "Be Thou My Vision." And one of the things that I sowed the seed is that when we can get back together face to face, and probably more importantly, when Ian, as health and safety officer, has deemed that it's okay for us to have a gathering where we can have coffee, biscuits, is I've actually sowed the seed that it would be good if we could just have a coffee morning where we can just have a really informal discussion as to where individuals feel Argyle Morley is going in the future. Because one of the things I picked up is you as a leader cannot do everything. And somebody in that group may have a very, very small seed of an idea that can be developed on. And it may be developed on as you as a leader, or it may be somebody else hears it and thinks, actually, yeah, if we take that one step further, we could grow it. But we have to start with people talking to each other and finding out just where is the fellowship going post-COVID.
So I guess one of the things that Faith-fuelled Leadership enabled you to do was give you the confidence to be able to think that you could be the person who initiates that kind of activity and that conversation, which previously you may not have done. And Claire, you said something yesterday about the urgent and the well, I can't remember exactly what you said.
I'm not sure my minister's best thrilled about it, but one of the little nuggets that we took away from the course was is the tendency of churches to do the urgent over the important. And I recognise that immediately, and perhaps lots of you can. And we were at an elders meeting, and I looked at the agenda and I just thought, nah, you know, we've got the urgent over the important here. And I said, oh, my faith-fuelled leadership course, they talked about this danger, and there's a little bit of rolling of the eyes, but then we turned the agenda around. And to go back to Carol's point there, it just gave me that confidence to say it. Perhaps I wouldn't have dared say that otherwise. You know, who am I? And I guess, and I love the way I can hear Carol using the word leader. And I don't know even before the course whether Carol would be so relaxed using that terminology about herself. And I think that's really interesting, because we start the course, it starts with what is a leader, and we perhaps all did this kind of, you know, it's male, middle-aged, educated, confident, you know, that kind of thing. Well, we didn't all, but you know, that we could recognize that trap that we were falling into. And what's wonderful about the course is that you can start to say, okay, you know, I might not be that person, but I can influence people in my, you know, knit and natter group, or I can, you know, help out at the toddler group, and you know, I'm quite good at singing, or whatever it might be. And I think definitely confidence was a big thing. And my worry is that people won't do the course because they'll go, oh, I'm not a leader. And I would really encourage people to get over that hump, because it's not all about the person who stands at the front and leads. It's about all of us discerning God's call and where that might be to influence people in whatever realm of our life.
Thank you. Time's moving on, and I think we'll draw this part of the conversation to a close, but you're going to come back later, just briefly, just to offer some words of encouragement. But that's been really interesting and really helpful to hear from your experiences from taking part in faith-fuelled leadership. Of course, as you can gather from that conversation, a key part of Stepwise is how we share with others, how we listen to the viewpoints of other group members and learn from each other and reflect together. That's something that runs throughout the whole of Stepwise. And so tonight, as with all of these webinars, we are going to break ourselves into breakout rooms, just to think a bit more about this word leadership. I'm just going to quickly share my screen again. So what I want each of you to do is just to think of someone who you admire as a leader. They might be someone who you know personally, or someone who's influenced you or continues to do so. It might be a public figure, a biblical character perhaps, or someone from history or even fiction. A leader who you admire. And then when you've thought of someone, just think, what is it that makes them a leader, and why do you admire them? What is it that makes them a leader, and why do you admire them? So we're going to go into breakout rooms for about 15 minutes, just to share together our responses to these questions. So once you're in there, introduce yourselves to one another, and then have a conversation about the leaders that you admire and why. Okay, see you all in a few minutes. Of course, at the heart of faith-fuelled leadership is this understanding that Christian leadership is rooted in our relationship with God. And that certainly came across quite strongly to me as I was listening to Carol and Ian and Claire talking about their experiences of doing the stream. One of the things that you'll soon discover if you begin faith-fuelled leadership is that the Growing Leaders material is full of geometric illustrations. Here's one that they made earlier, but it shows that that from our chosenness, from the fact that God has chosen us, all other aspects of Christian leadership flow. And the stream explores all of these aspects using a variety of methods, quite a lot of biblical examples, different kinds of activities, some personal and group reflection, and of course prayer and some worship. So throughout the whole of faith-fueled leadership, leadership itself is celebrated. It's seen as something that's positive. It's encouraged and developed so that existing leaders can be more effective in their roles, and new leaders can be given some of the skills and the confidence that they need to set out on their journey. So we're coming towards the end of our session this evening, and it's an opportunity now for you to ask any questions that you might have, or some comments that you might want to make about what you've heard and experienced this evening. And it's over to you. I can't see everybody on my. Oh, I can see you on my screen.
Pippa has a question.
Pippa.
Sorry to be practical.
Please do.
One of the advantages at the moment we have is that we can meet on Zoom. You did refer at the beginning of the session to if groups come forward, and yet I heard what Carol and Claire both said about being in a group with other people that you didn't know from other places. Is it proposed that that Zoom will continue to be used for this stream, and therefore we can have a countrywide group, or what's the plan?
I think the plan is to see who comes forward. I mean, there's no intention at all to prevent any groups from meeting on Zoom, and I would imagine that at the moment and for some time to come, that will still be the most practical way for any stepwise group to meet, because people aren't rushing to want to meet together face to face in person for a variety of reasons. So certainly, I think going forward there'll be a mixed sort of economy of forms of groups meeting, and Zoom will have a place and still be a part of that. So yes, I think the answer is we can still accommodate Zoom meetings. Yeah. Anyone else? Tom.
Yeah, I had a question around, because you mentioned how the growing leaders materials are key in this stream in particular. Thinking about when we're looking at different ages doing it together, so it being intergenerational, is there any, because I'm aware CPAS do a youth edition of Growing Leaders as well, so do you envision how would that work, or do you expect people to use the youth one as well if they've got youth, or would everyone use the Growing Leaders course?
The stream itself is designed around the main Growing Leaders, the one that was written for adults, I suppose. I think there was some, when we were writing it, we did have access to Growing Leaders for youth. I think it would take some adapting, but I'm sure it's possible. I mean, of course, there isn't a youth edition of the book. There's only one edition of the book, so it would probably take some adapting. But I'd be really interested to work with a group if they wanted to use. I mean, I think the program follows a very similar pattern. I mean, I've looked at the outline of Growing Leaders for younger people, so I'm sure it's entirely possible. But it would take some adaptation, I think, to start with. But that's a really interesting question. I've made a note of that for as we develop it, going forward. We've had quite a few conversations in various places about how this could be used for younger people. But I'm still hopeful that we can find a way to do that. So yeah, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Joanne.
I have to admit, this is the first one of these I've been to, and it wasn't quite what I was expecting. But based on that, obviously you said at the beginning that the faith-filled life was the introduction that everybody did, and then came on to this. Do you see individual churches running a faith-filled life, or do it in lags, or sort of how does that work? Where does the inspiration usually come from to set one of these up?
The honest answer is it comes from a variety of different places, and if we look at the groups that have, the faith-filled life groups that we've got meeting or have had met, some are based in local churches, some are based in more wider geographical areas. In the past year, we've had groups which have gathered from quite larger areas, and we've included people sort of who might feel a bit isolated in where they are, and they've been able to join a group in a different place. So the energy and the inspiration comes from a variety of places. Sometimes it comes from people in the regions, in the synods, your training officers or people like that who've committed to setting up groups. Whereabouts are you based, Joanne?
West London, Thames North.
Oh, okay. There's a group about to start in Thames North.
Oh, right, okay.
So, and one of the facilitators is Alison, who's somewhere above you or below you.
Myself, David. Joanne, I'll send you my email address in the chat box, and you can then contact me.
Okay.
Campbell and I are co-facilitating a group. Okay.
Right, lovely, thank you. Is that the leadership group or the life group?
It's the life group. We're doing the very first one because that has to be done first for everybody. And Jill Hunt, who's also on the screen, is hopefully going to be doing it as well.
Okay.
Good.
Pop in the chat and that'll help me.
Well, we can put you two together anyway somehow. So that's good. So, thank you. Yeah, Jim. Yeah.
It's just a question we were discussing in our group as to where the program might cover what might be described as Christian leadership in our day-to-day work. The focus seems very, very much Christian leadership in relation to the organization of the church. And it's just my experience that very, very few churches actually discuss with people about the kind of concerns and issues which they have to deal with every day in their work situation. And I suppose that would be emphasized by saying that at least 50% of people are making decisions every day of the week which they know are against the common good. They work in banks, they work in civil service, they work for the government, they're members of parliament. The church never discusses what that actually means there. And in a sense, that kind of leadership, and I suppose linked to that, my question might be, if it's not a heretical type of question, is as to whether Christian leadership is rooted in our relationship with other people. What's the difference between the relationship with God and a relationship with other people? What's the difference?
That's a really interesting question, and I think from the perspective of faith-fuelled leadership and growing leaders, certainly the first section of the stream focuses more broadly on how we on leadership in its whole way, not just about church leadership and the things that inspire us, the character and the qualities of leadership, and the very strongly the understanding is that we lead, that we are in community. We are leading together with others, or we exist together with others. We don't lead in a vacuum. That other people are important as well in our relationships. That's a PhD thesis. Thanks, Pippa, for that comment. I mean, I think the whole thing about discipleship and whole of life discipleship is at the heart of Stepwise, and that would certainly would speak to me of what we do in our 24/7 lives, not just about church leadership, but about our existence and our relationships with others as well. I think it would also depend on who you were doing the stream with. You know, if you've got lots of people with different experiences of leadership in the kind of environment you've talked about, then there'd be very rich conversations about the decisions that people make daily and what influences and drives those.
Can we assume that within these 3 sessions there's kind of substantial discussion about the difference that URC makes between community ministry and sacramental ministry, because you make a significant statement in these 2 aspects, and I'm familiar for at least 20 years of involvement with URC in relation to community ministry, which in a sense is not primarily about building up the church, but it's been building up the kingdom. You know, and hence my question in relation to people. And I think some of the risks, if I may say, which the URC church faces, you know, is assuming that that the kingdom will be built up by building up the church, rather than a kingdom being built up by nurturing Christian relationships and different things in the community. And I think that the danger of the 3 sections as described tended not to seem to go along that pathway at all, which worried me a little bit, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah. And there are other aspects of Stepwise that would focus particularly on community. I mean, faith-filled community. I don't know if you were at the webinar we did a couple of weeks ago, but the focus there is about how we lead and how we are churches and individuals as Christians in community, and how we develop relationships outside of the church as well as within them. So, but yeah, interesting points raised there. Thank you very, very much, Jim. Has anybody else got any other questions? Sam, you have your hand up?
Yes. Could you give us just a sense of, you talked about journals and projects. So just a little sense of what those things are or mean or might look like for somebody doing this stream.
So reflective practice, the opportunity to think about what you're experiencing and learning and discovering throughout the whole of the Stepwise and the stream is encouraged, and different ways of doing that. Part of that is the encouragement to create some kind of journal of reflection as you go through. There are guidelines which are provided to help people to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's written, but it's just a way that people can then make their journey something that they can then look back at, and some people find it helpful to write things down and to revise, to revisit things. So the journal is part of what we'd encourage people to create as they go through the whole of Stepwise, and including this stream. And sorry, your other question,
Sorry. Projects was the
project
you mentioned.
That's right. Yeah, within the Growing Leaders material, and therefore in Faith-fuelled Leadership, there are 4 quite small projects that individuals, participants, are encouraged to do. Things like, for example, completing a spiritual health check using some guidance and some handouts which are available. Another one is thinking about how they might develop another person in leadership. So identifying somebody and nurturing and helping them to grow and develop in leadership. So there are 4 identified smaller projects within Faith-fuelled Leadership that people are encouraged to do. Okay. Anything else? Wow, well, that's been a good set of questions there. Sometimes we don't have any. but some really interesting and deep conversations. So thank you for that. And if you still have questions that haven't been answered or some that occur to you later on, then please feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll do our best to answer them and to help you in that way. Before we go, I'm just going to ask again, Carolyn, Ian, and Claire, just to very briefly, because we've gone over time a little bit, just to say a couple of things that they might say to encourage people to look at this stream in more detail.
Shall I go first?
Go on, Carol, you go first.
The one thing I didn't say at the beginning of this is I did Faith-fuelled Leadership because I was told by somebody who was very difficult to say no to that I should do it. So I went into it at the beginning as quite a reluctant participant. As we move through, other than when I did my training to be able to lead Holy Communion, I would say it's the second most rewarding thing I have ever done in my Christian life. It has helped me. It's made me understand my discipleship and where I fit in God's plan, as it were. And it's also given me courage to try and use what I've learnt in my own congregation here in Bristol. So please, if you've got the time, it will be good for you. And because it's good for you, it will be good for your churches.
Thanks, Carol. Follow that.
I agree with Carol, but then, no, I mean, all right. The person who persuaded Carol to do it was a visiting local minister within the URC. Carol said, if I'm doing it, you're going to do it with me. And I've got to really echo what Carol said. I'm not going to say it's one of the best things I've done, but it was extremely good. Some of it can be hard. Some of the sessions you think that was hard. Not horribly hard, but it makes you think. You can get as much out of it as really you put in almost. Yes, there's journals, yes, but that's down to you. It's not that there isn't a written set of rules that you've got to do everything you've got to do. It's about you getting out of it what you can. It's important to do all the sessions. It's very difficult to get through it without doing all the sessions, but I think only a couple of us managed that and people still benefited from it. But it really makes you think about you and your faith, your faith, how your faith can work for God in your church and the wider area, really.
Thanks, Ian. And go on, Claire. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, I would just like to say that this course is so empowering, and I wish that loads of people could take part and do it, because with like Jim's point, the kind of the balance of the in and the up and the out, I think is great. You know, the element of developing yourself and your relationship with God, and then how it works in all aspects of your life. I think it really is. I've got so much out of it, and my one fear is that people go, do you know what? I don't think I'm a leader. Well, just push that to one side, and trust me, you will be by the end of it, because it helps you realize the skills that you have, and perhaps also importantly the skills that you don't. But it's really empowering. So I would say give it a go.
Great, thank you.
I think it's probably important to say that the three of us are saying these things from our hearts. We haven't been sort of told what to say, or there isn't a briefing. This is how the three of us, feel about this course.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so there you are. That's Faith-fuelled Leadership. I hope you found that helpful this evening, and maybe if you've got an interest in pursuing that, then please get in touch with us, and we'll give you some more details. if you are interested, of course, then there are things that you can do. And again, I'll just quickly share my screen. So obviously Faith-Filled Life comes first, as we've said, but if you contact the person who's coordinating Stepwise in your synod, or if you send an email to Marion, and Marion's email address is there, then we tend to know what's going on in synods and around the place, so we can put you in touch with them, or let you know what's happening. It'd be good to hear from you. Thank you this evening to Thomas and to Marion, and particularly to Carol and Ian and Claire for coming and sharing their stories with us. It's been really inspiring and helpful to have you with us and to hear of your experiences. And thank you everyone else who's come this evening for giving up your time and learning more about faith-fueled leadership and Stepwise. We've got one more webinar to come. That's in a fortnight, and that's going to be about faith-filled confidence, 27th of April, again, 7 o'clock. And it will last for no longer an hour unless there's lots of questions that we need to answer. But I'm glad you stuck around, and it's been good to see you all. So thank you, and good evening. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Good night now.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.